sci-fi novels, but soon it could be a reality.
President Trump stated clearly and forcefully that space is, in his words, a war-fighting domain just like land and air and sea. The time has come to establish the United States Space Force.
All right, so what exactly is the Space Force, and will it improve our national defense? Here with insight into this is John J.V. Venable, a 25-year veteran of the U.S. Air Force and senior research fellow for defense policy at the Heritage Foundation. J.V., when people hear this, they think of, spaceships, the U.S. spaceship firing into Russian spaceships and like Star Wars, but that's not what this is about, right?
No, Rob, it's not. Good morning, Rob. Jillian, it's a pleasure to be with you. This is combining what we have throughout DoD, and each of the services has some portion of space assets, control, or the likes. There's 66 disparate organizations or entities that have some influence on this within DoD, and this is rounding those all up and getting them heading in a direction of being able to conduct operations in space in defense of and in support of the United States.
JV, is this necessary?
I think the time is right. You could question whether we would do this now or in 2 or 3 years, but what the Department of Defense has done in this release yesterday has shown great awareness and the methodical approach. You'd be proud of it if you read through the document. 4 steps that they can use their current authorities, and then we'll have to wait for Congress to come in with legislation in order to establish this space service or space force.
And it sounds like Russia and China have really escalated this issue and brought us to the point where we need this force and we need this kind of protection because we are so dependent on satellites, and we can't be put in a position where we are vulnerable to attacks on our satellites from these foreign actors that we can't trust, like China and Russia, right?
Rob, you're exactly right. There's nothing we do that doesn't rely on space right now, from GPS navigation, GPS weapons deliveries, and the likes. We rely on space, and the Russians and the Chinese, they've watched us for the last 20 years. They know that. And their moves in space have been significant. What we've watched them do, co-orbiting with our satellites, and the things that we suspect that they're moving into right now has got to be countered. Not just countered, but we've got to take the lead in it, as Vice President Pence said yesterday.
So how do you see this actually happening? Like a timeline for this? How long might this take?
Jillian, it's got to be a phased approach. Using current authorities, the Department of Defense is basically rounding up the people in each of the 4 Department of Defense services, and they're going to call this a space operational force. And they're going to use that as the foundation for what will eventually become this space force, which becomes a service. 2 other things they're going to do is streamline acquisition, this opportunity to not just streamline it, but take the lead in it and developing the assets that we need in space. And the third major step is establishing a combatant command like CENTCOM or NORTHCOM, where we actually start thinking about space. Those 3 things that the Department of Defense can do with the President's signature to establish this combatant command with a unified command plan, that'll establish the foundation, give the Congress the legs they need to bring legislation forth in the next 2 years and establish the Space Force.
It's pretty wild.
Yeah. Well, the Secretary of Defense was against this idea, and now he's for it, so at least everybody's in sync here, and we'll see how it develops. Sir, thank you so much for your time this morning.
Pleasure, Rob.
All right, 49 minutes after the